When I first arrived on the island, I had no idea where I was. I only knew I was in some sort of swamp, with water clearer than any swamp I had ever seen, but a swamp nonetheless. My first instinct as a researcher was to explore the environment, investigate, but that would have to wait. Dangers lurked in the water. Dangers beyond imagine. I never knew what it was that first took a bite out of me, and I hope I never find out. I swam, and I ran, and I looked for any way to get out of this hostile environment. However, the terrain was less easily navigated than one might think. Making my way onto a rock, I paused for a moment to look around and see if my pursuer was still there. It appeared to have left me alone for now. I quickly realized that if I was going to survive here, I needed to get food and water and shelter. The water around here appeared clear, but I was unsure of its drinkability. So I set out looking for a way to create fire in order to desalinate the water and cook food while I was at it. But first, I would need tools. So I began gathering up rocks and tinder from the trees in order to create a crude stone tool that I could use to get resources a lot easier without hurting my hands from punching trees to gather thatch. Thinking back, I probably should have just pulled the bark off the trees instead. But as they say, hindsight's 20/20. I decided at that moment to check out the strange stone on my arm and realized that it gave me a readout of my vital signs and inventory, which I hadn't even realized that I wasn't even carrying the stuff that I picked up. Somehow it had been transported into the stone. And while I was curious as to how it functioned, survival was my primary goal. I paused for a moment to look around the beach to try to cool off a bit. Then I realized nature was calling. After relieving myself, I quickly got back to work trying to build a stone pickaxe in order to gather resources more efficiently. With enough resources collected, I crafted this crude stone tool and set out to continue gathering resources. I took note of the strange bird creatures that appeared to be dodos nearby, as they would make an excellent food source. However, I would need fire to cook them on, so I continued gathering resources. Checking my arm once again, I realized that I could create fire, if only for warmth, in the form of a torch. So I set out to gather some flint in order to create such a tool. These rocks here would provide the rocks didn't seem to give me what I needed. For some reason, I was unable to hit them. However, the smaller rocks nearby, they gave me exactly what I needed. Flint and stone. Not that I needed stone, as there was plenty around, but you can never have enough stone. After crafting up the torch, I set back out on gathering more resources to build a fire with, because I was unable to recall how to build a fire. But suddenly, it hit me. I felt a wave of experience and knowledge, and decided to check my arm and realized that I could improve my vital statistics and learn how to craft a fireplace and a hatchet. With my newfound knowledge in store, I quickly realized I had enough resources to craft the hatchet, which would improve my wood gathering capabilities. So I set out, gathering more resources in order to build a campfire. I needed some of everything. Thatch in order to use as kindling to start the fire, wood to keep the fire burning, and stones in order to create a ring around the fire that would keep the heat inside. I already had the flint necessary to actually ignite the fire, but I needed stones. Lots and lots of stones. After gathering up what seemed like 1,000 stones, I finally had enough resources to craft this campfire. The next thing I needed was meat to cook on the fire. Not that Triceratops, I don't want to kill that. This thing looks like it could have some meat in it, and it suckered itself to my face. So I tried to burn it off. Burning it didn't seem to work. It was quickly draining my stamina. In a frantic attempt to get this leech off of me, I dropped my torch and had to pick it up again, and couldn't find a way to get it off of me. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't pull this leech off with my hands. I couldn't burn it off with the torch. I couldn't even use the hatchet to pull it off of my face. But then I saw there was something on the ground that I could pick up. Maybe I could use it to get it off. What is this? Oh, well, that's not going to help. I was frantic and in trouble, my blood being sucked out by this tiny menace. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't figure out how to get it off of me. Then I thought, if I built the campfire right here and then stood on the campfire, perhaps I could get it off. It worked. For some reason, I couldn't burn it off with the torch or cut it off with a hatchet, but standing on a campfire got that leech off of me. Now that I had a campfire, I had to figure out what I was going to cook on it. I didn't want to cook any of these dinosaurs. That's when I realized there were dinosaurs around. And while it was a curiosity, I was extremely hungry and didn't want to provoke any of them. So I decided to go with my original plan of killing the dodo birds and eating them. After killing one, I realized that beating it with my pickaxe would provide me with all the meat I needed, or at least some of it. I would need at least 2 of these dodo birds to sate my hunger, and I figured there's another one right here, so might as well take it out too. Of course, the second dodo only provided me with hide and no edible meat, which was a disappointment. I returned to find a Triceratops tromping all over my fireplace. Placing the meat on the fireplace, I was looking forward to a delicious meal of cooked dodo bird. I decided that while I let the meat cook up, I would dispose of my unwanted inventory, and then the trike came back and started messing with my fireplace again. I was wary of attacking it to get it away, but fortunately its stomping around didn't mess up the fire too much, and the meat that I was cooking was soon ready to eat. Delicious dodo bird steak. As I was waiting for the second piece of meat to cook up, my thoughts turned to what I was going to do next. I didn't want to stay around this area with all these animals tromping around, and I decided to pick up camp and move to a less crowded area. By demolishing my campfire, I realized that I got some of the resources back, which would be good because I would need them to build another campfire a little ways down the coastline. I decided to gather up the necessary resources in order to build another campfire so that I could put one down when I find a more suitable location. I was aware that I needed thatch and flint in order to craft this campfire, so I found the rocks that had given me the flint in the past and quickly gathered up as much as I could. With enough resources gathered, I crafted the campfire and prepared to move out along the coastline. But that's when I realized that I was severely thirsty. I decided I would test the waters and see if it would provide what I needed. And amazingly, it was fresh water. This entire ocean was fresh water. I had never come across a freshwater ocean before, but then again, neither had I come across dinosaurs that were thought to be extinct, but yet here they were. So I ran down the coastline, keeping an eye out for any predators that might come out of the swamp and brutally murder me. I didn't see any creatures along the coastline, but I wasn't going to stop running until I knew that I was safe. Then I saw it. Ahead of me was a clearing outside of the swamp. It looked like a nice beach to set up a home on. Even though sand wasn't the best foundation for a house, I figured it would do in a pinch. I looked around for any signs of non-hostile life, some of those dodo birds or something of the like, so that I could at least set a campfire down and cook up some food. I saw some massive turtles in the area, but those wouldn't do. I mean, getting through that hard shell would be a pain in the butt. So I continued looking until I found them. Some dodo birds. So I went ahead and started hatcheting the first one, trying to kill it to get meat. It went down fairly quickly, and I went ahead and used my pickaxe to bludgeon the meat out of it. And then I set about searching for the second dodo. And when I found it, started hatcheting it as well. But this one was a bit tougher. It seemed to scowl at me as I swung my hatchet in an attempt to brutally murder it and collect its meat for food. After the longest battle with a bird in my life, I finally got it down and immediately set upon it with my pickaxe. I then set out to find a location to craft up this campfire as I was getting severely hungry. But soon I realized that during my battle I had gained an insight into survival, improving my speed once again and getting the engrams for a spear and some articles of clothing that I found would be quite useful in keeping warm or cool as needed. So I set out gathering up resources to craft these items, starting with fiber to craft the shirt and pants. Near where I was gathering this fiber, there was a small creature, looked like a Lystrosaurus of some sort, but I didn't have enough time to investigate fully and continued on gathering fiber, which I would need a lot of fiber. And I got some berries while I was at it, just, extra food that I could eat in case I was unable to get enough meat. Now, gathering resources was quite time-consuming, and I knew I had a limited amount of daylight left, and dangers would come out at night. So I decided to craft the spear first, and went about gathering wood for that. I soon had enough resources to craft a spear to defend myself while gathering fiber for the rest of the items. However, I soon realized it was difficult to gather resources with a weapon in hand, so I put the spear away and continued gathering resources by hand. As it got darker, my quest to gather more fiber became more frantic, but I was running out of the necessary grasses that would provide me with enough fiber, so I had to grab whatever grasses I could and get what fiber I could as quickly as I could. With daylight quickly fading, I realized I would need wood to burn in the campfire, so I gathered up as much as I could and then decided to craft up a shirt. While crafting up the shirt, I realized just how hungry I was, so I started eating the berries that I gathered while I was gathering the fiber, and I was glad that I did. As the sun finally went down, I decided to put down the campfire that I had crafted earlier and light it up and start cooking up some of the meat that I had, and decided to try on the shirt that I had sewn. I went back to gathering fiber while the meat cooked up in order to craft the pants that I knew how to craft. This would take a lot of fiber. But eventually, I had the pants. After putting them on, I ran back to the campsite so that I could keep warm in this frigid air. But then again, I realized nature was calling. I then returned to the camp, and in my haste to get the food out, snuffed out the fire. I gathered the food, relit the fire, and then decided to make sure that there were no dangerous animals around before enjoying my meal. In the distance, I took note of strange light shafts that were appearing in the night, and wondered what they could be. Eventually, I would have to take a look and investigate, but not tonight. Tonight, I was going to rest and prepare for tomorrow. The night was long and cold, and I knew that I would have to find some way to keep warmer, as the campfire wasn't even doing enough. Even if I was right up next to it, I was still cold. I decided to take a look around and see if there was any other way to keep warm, creatures that I could kill and strip for hide to use as a blanket or something, but I couldn't find any. But then the ocean caught my view. I thought maybe it was warm water. I mean, it was cooler during the day, but perhaps the water would keep me a little warmer. I was wrong. I quickly got severely cold and decided that getting in the water wasn't the best idea. So I hurried back out and towards the campfire, which surprisingly felt a lot warmer now that I was soaking wet. Well, I guess that's not so surprising. Standing there by the fire, soaking wet, trying to dry off and keep warm, I was thinking, what could I do next? And then I had a stroke of inspiration. I realized that I again had the ability to increase my vital statistics, and decided this time to increase my health rather than making myself faster, just so that I wouldn't die if I got too cold. I also realized that I had gained the ability to craft basic structures and a sleeping bag. But I realized I didn't have enough hide to craft the sleeping bag, so I set out searching for animals to kill. At first, I couldn't find any, but then I spotted it, off in the distance. That little Lystrosaurus. And while it was cute, I had to kill it, because I needed its hide for a sleeping bag. Of course, it didn't provide me with nearly enough hide, so I decided to keep looking and see if I could find any more. And I did. One more Lystrosaurus right here, fresh for the taking. Even though I didn't have enough hide yet, I ran back to the campfire to put the meat on the fire so that I would have enough food to get me throughout the night and possibly into the next day. I realized that the campfire was running low on wood, so I decided to gather up some and throw it on the fire to keep it burning. After eating a little bit of the cooked up meat, I decided to head on out and continue my search for animals to kill for hide. Unfortunately, the only thing I could find was a Dilophosaurus. Now, I knew a little bit about dilos, and I knew that their spit was poisonous, so I avoided that and quickly annihilated this tiny creature. I ran back to the campfire to put the meat on it that I had gathered from the dilo. I then hurriedly headed back out to collect the last of the hide needed to craft the sleeping bag. And then I saw what appeared to be some sort of proto-elephant thing. Not entirely sure what it was called, but then I realized it was called a Phiomia. And of course, it ran away as soon as I started attacking it, so I was unable to gather any hide from it because it ran into the swamp, and I wasn't about to follow it into the swamp. But fortunately, another dilo was nearby, and I decided to try to take it out, easily sidestepping its spit and poking it to bits with my spear. It was a little more difficult than the previous dilo, but I eventually got it down. Finally, having enough hide to craft the sleeping bag, I went ahead and started crafting it while I was heading back to the campfire. I was glad that I was finally going to be able to get to lie down and rest because I had had a long day. It had been exhausting, but I had survived. Tomorrow I would have to start working on building a little house to stay in, or at least a hut. But for now, I was done. I put down the sleeping bag right near the campfire so I would stay a little warmer. And then I looked around one last time, making sure there was no hostile creatures in the area. And then I crawled into the sleeping bag and quickly fell asleep. Thank you for watching this special episode of ARK Survival Evolved. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, hit that like button for me. And if you want to see more ARK Survival Evolved, don't forget to subscribe. I'm KnowItAllDM, and as always, y'all have a good day now.